seeds of fate. The cool mountain air kissed Julian Reed's face as he stood on the balcony of his Aspen estate, watching the sunset paint the sky in hues of amber and gold. At 35, he had achieved what most people could only dream of: founding. Nexus Technologies and revolutionizing quantum computing had earned him billions and worldwide acclaim. Yet as the last rays of sunlight disappeared behind the mountains, a familiar emptiness settled in his chest. "Mr. Reed, the landscape architect is waiting to discuss the garden renovations." His assistant's voice crackled through the intercom. Julian sighed, running a hand through his dark hair streaked with premature silver at the temples. The estate. Renovations were supposed to help him feel more at home in this massive property, but nothing ever seemed to fill the void that success had somehow deepened rather than closed. "Send her in," he replied, turning to face the glass doors that led to his study. When Camilla Vargas entered, Julian felt something he hadn't experienced in years: genuine curiosity. She wasn't what he expected. In her early 30s, she wore practical clothes: jeans, boots, and a simple blouse. Her chestnut hair was gathered in a loose ponytail, and her olive skin glowed with the health of someone who spent their days outside. No makeup, no pretense, just quiet confidence. "Mr. Reed," she said, extending her hand. "I'm Camila Vargas from Terra Designs." Her voice carried traces of an accent, Spanish perhaps, and her handshake was firm, her hands calloused. "From Real Work. Please," he gestured to the sitting area. "Tell me about your vision for the gardens." As she spread her designs across the coffee table, Julian found himself captivated not just by her plans, but by her passion. She spoke about native plants, sustainable water features, and creating spaces that would change with the seasons, always revealing something new. "Your property has incredible potential," she explained, her eyes alight with enthusiasm. "Right now it's beautiful but static, like a photograph. I want to give you a garden that breathes, that tells a different story each time you walk through it." "You speak about plants as if they're alive," Julian observed, a small smile playing at his lips. "They are alive," Camilla replied without hesitation, "just on a different timescale than humans. What appears to be stillness is actually slow dancing." Over the next 3 weeks, Julian found reasons to be present during the landscaping work. He watched from his office window as Camilla directed her small team, often kneeling in the dirt herself to plant seedlings or move stones. She worked with the land rather than imposing upon it, listening to what the space wanted to become rather than forcing her will upon it. One evening, as a summer storm rolled over the mountains, Julian found Camilla scrambling to secure tarps over freshly planted areas. Without thinking, he ran outside to help, his expensive suit soaked within seconds. They worked in wordless synchronicity, securing coverings and moving equipment to shelter. When the downpour became too heavy, they dashed to the covered patio, laughing and breathless. "Look at you," Camilla smiled, gesturing to his ruined clothes. "The famous Julian Reed, soaked to the bone and covered in mud." "It feels good," he admitted, surprising himself with his honesty. "Real." Something shifted between them as lightning illuminated her face. In that frozen moment, Julian saw something he recognized: loneliness carefully hidden behind capability and purpose. They talked for hours as the storm raged, about her childhood in a small town outside Barcelona, her immigration to America, her struggle to build her business. He shared his own story: the coding competitions in high school, dropping out of MIT to launch his company, the relentless work that had consumed his 20s. When the rain finally stopped, stars emerged in the clearing sky. Without planning or pretense, they found themselves drawn together like two planets caught in each other's gravity. His kiss tasted of rain and possibility, her embrace solid and real in a way nothing in his life had felt for years. That night, in the simplicity of human connection, Julian's carefully constructed walls crumbled. In Camilla's arms, he wasn't a billionaire or a tech pioneer. He was simply a man finding comfort in the warmth of another soul who understood what it meant to build something from nothing. Neither could have known that this single night would plant seeds that would grow to reshape both their lives, roots extending far deeper than either could imagine as the mountain winds whispered secrets only time would reveal. Silent echoes. 5 years passed like leaves caught in a swift current. Julian Reed had expanded Nexus Technologies into artificial intelligence, his fortune tripling as his algorithms reshaped industries from healthcare to transportation. Yet success had only intensified his isolation, his Aspen estate remaining largely unchanged, except for the gardens, Camilla's gardens, which had matured into living poems of color and texture, a daily reminder of what briefly was and what might have been. The morning dawned crisp and clear as Julian's helicopter descended toward the San Francisco Museum of Modern Art. The institution was hosting a gala fundraiser for children's art, education, and as a major donor, Julian's appearance was expected. He straightened his tie as he approached the building, nodding mechanically to photographers and fellow patrons. "Mr. Reed, wonderful to see you," gushed the museum director, Penelope Worthington. "There's a special exhibition I think you'll find fascinating. An emerging artist who creates botanical sculptures. Given your famous gardens, I thought it might resonate." Julian followed Penelope through the crowded gallery until they stood before an installation that stole his breath. It was a suspended garden, living plants woven into a delicate structure that seemed to defy gravity, their roots exposed yet nurturing each other in an intricate dance of survival and symbiosis. "The artist calls it Whispers of What Remains," Penelope explained. "Magdalena Ortiz is making waves in environmental art circles. She's actually here tonight. Let me introduce you." Before Julian could respond, a child's laughter echoed through the gallery, a sound so pure and bright it seemed to cut through the pretentious murmur of the crowd. He turned instinctively toward the sound and froze. A little girl, perhaps 4 years old, was spinning beneath the suspended garden, her arms outstretched as if trying to embrace the hanging roots. Her dark hair fell in unruly curls around a face that struck Julian with an uncanny sense of familiarity. Her eyes, a distinctive shade of amber that he saw in the mirror each morning, crinkled with joy as she gazed upward. "Sophia," a woman's voice called gently. "Remember what we discussed about museum behavior?" The girl stopped spinning but continued to smile up at the installation. "But Mama, the plants are dancing, just like you said they do in the ground, only now we can see it." Julian's heart hammered against his ribs as the woman approached. She wore a simple black dress, her chestnut hair now cut short around her face, highlighting elegant cheekbones and full lips. Older, more refined, but unmistakably Camilla. She hadn't noticed him yet, focused entirely on her daughter as she knelt beside the child. "You're right, Mija. They are dancing. That's what makes this art so special. It shows what's usually hidden." "Like secrets?" the girl asked. "Like secrets," Camilla confirmed, tucking a curl behind the child's ear, a gesture so tender it made Julian's chest ache. That's when she looked up and saw him. The color drained from her face, her body going completely still as their eyes locked across the polished floor. In that frozen moment, Julian knew with absolute certainty that the child, Sophia, was his daughter. Penelope, oblivious to the silent earthquake reshaping Julian's world, touched his elbow. "Mr. Reed, shall I introduce you to Miss Ortiz?" "Excuse me," Julian managed, his voice sounding distant to his own ears. He moved forward as if in a dream, stopping a few feet from Camilla and the child. His child. "Hello, Camilla," he said softly. The little girl looked up at him with curious eyes. "Mama, who's this man?" Camilla seemed to struggle for words, her composure cracking slightly. "This is an old friend of mine, Sophia. Mr. Reed helped Mama with her first big garden project. Julian knelt to the child's level, his throat tight with emotion. It's very nice to meet you, Sophia. Your mother is very talented. I know, Sophia said with the absolute confidence of childhood. She makes the prettiest gardens in the whole world. And now she makes art, too. She pointed up at the installation. Mama made this. Understanding dawned like a slow sunrise. Magdalena. Ortiz was Camila's professional name, her mother's maiden name, perhaps. She had reinvented herself as an environmental artist. Her work with living plants evolved into this new form of expression. It's beautiful, Julian said, looking directly at Camilla. Truly extraordinary. Camilla finally found her voice. Sophia, would you please go ask Ms. Worthington to show you the interactive exhibit we saw earlier? Just for a few minutes while I talk to my friend? When the child skipped away, Julian and Camilla stood in the shadow of her creation, 5 years of unspoken words hanging between them like the suspended roots above. She's mine, Julian said. Not a question. Camilla nodded, her composure returning, though her hands trembled slightly. Yes. Why didn't you tell me? She reached into her small clutch purse and removed a worn, sealed envelope, its edges soft from years of handling. I did. Or at least I tried to. She held it out to him. I wrote this 5 years ago, the week after I left Aspen. I carried it with me every day, trying to find the courage to send it. Julian took the envelope, his fingers brushing hers. But you never did. No, she admitted. At first I was scared of what it would mean for both of us. Then I found out I was pregnant, and the stakes became so much higher. Your career was exploding. The world was watching you. I didn't want to be the scandal that followed your name in every headline. That wasn't your decision to make, Julian said, his voice tight with controlled emotion. She's my daughter. Yes, Camilla whispered. And that's why I came here tonight. When I saw your name on the donor list, I knew it was time. Sophia deserves to know her father, and you deserve to know her. She glanced toward where the child was now excitedly pointing at an interactive light display. I never planned for us to meet like this. I thought I'd see you alone first, explain everything. Julian looked down at the envelope in his hands, 5 years of secrets sealed within its folds. And now? Now, Camilla said, you should read that letter, and then, if you want to know your daughter, we can talk about how to move forward. As Julian slipped the letter into his jacket pocket, Sophia came running back, her eyes bright with excitement. Mama! They have lights you can move with just your hands! Come see! Julian watched as Camilla took her daughter's hand, the identical smile they shared striking him like a physical blow. His daughter. He had a daughter who had been growing, learning, becoming a person for 4 years without him knowing she existed. Perhaps, he said, surprising himself with the steadiness of his voice, I could join you both? I'd like to see these magical lights. Sophia looked up at him, then at her mother, silently asking permission. When Camilla gave a small nod, the girl extended her free hand to Julian without hesitation, offering connection with the simple trust of childhood. As Julian's fingers closed around his daughter's hand for the first time, the gallery around them seemed to fade, leaving only this moment of contact, of beginnings disguised as chance, echoing like whispers through the silent chambers of his heart. Buried Truths. The letter lay open on Julian's desk in his San Francisco penthouse, its handwritten pages illuminated by the soft glow of his desk lamp. Outside, the city lights sparkled against the night sky, but Julian saw nothing beyond the words written in Camilla's flowing script. Julian, by the time you read this, I'll be gone from your life. What happened between us was beautiful, more real than anything I've experienced before. But we both know it can't continue. Your world and mine exist in different orbits, and I refuse to become the woman who tried to catch a falling star. I've spent my life building something from nothing, creating beauty from bare earth. I know the value of hard work and clean hands. You've built an empire of technology and innovation that's changing the world. We are both creators, but the gap between our creations is too vast to bridge. There's more to tell you, but I lack the courage to write it here. Perhaps someday I'll find the strength to share the rest of this story. Until then, know that I leave with only gratitude for the night we shared. A moment of genuine connection in a world that often feels disconnected. Take care of yourself, Julian. Remember to step away from your screen sometimes and feel the earth beneath your feet. Camilla postscript, written in different ink, betrayed its later edition. I'm pregnant. The child is yours. I don't expect anything from you, but you deserve to know. I'll understand if you want no part in this. If you do, you know how to find me? Julian read the words for the dozenth time, each line etching itself deeper into his consciousness. The courage it must have taken Camilla to write this, to carry it for years, to finally face him tonight. It humbled him. His phone chimed with a message from his head of security, the background check he'd requested on Camilla Vargas, now professionally, known as Magdalena Ortiz. He hesitated, then opened the file. The facts were laid out in clinical detail. After leaving Aspen, Camilla had continued her landscaping business while taking night classes in environmental art. When her pregnancy became apparent, she'd moved to Oakland, renting a modest apartment and transforming the building's neglected courtyard into a community garden. She'd given birth to Sophia Reed Vargas on February 12th, 5 years ago. Despite financial struggles, she'd never sought financial assistance that might have revealed the child's paternity. Her art installations had gradually gained recognition, culminating in tonight's museum exhibition. What the report couldn't capture was what Julian had seen in person: Sophia's bright intelligence, Camilla's unwavering dedication, the beautiful bond between mother and daughter. He closed the file, ashamed of having ordered it, yet relieved to confirm what he already knew. Camilla had protected their daughter while building a life of dignity and purpose. The morning sun was just breaking over the horizon when Julian's car pulled up outside the Oakland address he'd memorized from the report. The building was a converted warehouse, its brick facade softened by cascading plants growing from balconies and window boxes. The courtyard garden Camilla had created was visible through an iron gate, a lush oasis in the urban landscape. As Julian approached the entrance, the gate opened and Camilla emerged, clearly expecting him. She wore jeans and a simple blouse, her face bare of makeup, looking more like the woman he'd known in Aspen than the polished artist from the gallery. "You came earlier than I expected," she said quietly. "I didn't sleep," Julian admitted. "Is Sophia still sleeping? My neighbor watches her when I have early appointments." Camilla gestured to a bench nestled among flowering shrubs. "We can talk here." As they sat, Julian noticed the small details of the garden: stone pathways spiraling through beds of native plants, a small pond with water lilies, vertical gardens climbing the walls. Even in this limited space, Camilla had created a world of beauty and function. "I read your letter," Julian began. "I understand why you left Aspen, but what I don't understand is why you never sent it. 5 years, Camilla. 5 years of my daughter's life that I can never get back." Camilla's eyes reflected both regret and resolve. "After I wrote it, I saw your face on the cover of Technology Pioneer. You were being hailed as the next great innovator, with investors throwing billions at Nexus. I imagined what a scandal would do to that trajectory. The speculation, the tabloids claiming I was after your money." She looked down at her hands. "Then I imagined Sophia growing up in that spotlight, her life dissected before she could even understand what was happening." "So you decided for both of us," Julian said, his voice tight with controlled emotion. "Yes," Camilla acknowledged without flinching. I made a choice I thought would protect both you and Sophia. Was it the right choice? I don't know, but it was made with love, not malice. Julian ran a hand through his hair, frustration warring with understanding. And now? Why come forward now? Because she's starting to ask questions about her father. Because she deserves to know where she comes from. Because... Camilla paused, vulnerability flickering across her face. Because I saw how you've used your resources to fund children's education and environmental initiatives. The man I read about in those articles seemed like someone Sophia should know. A small voice interrupted their conversation. Mama? Who's talking to you? They both turned to see Sophia standing in the doorway of the building, rubbing sleep from her eyes, her curls wild around her face. Camilla extended her hand, beckoning the child closer. Remember Mr. Reed from the museum? He came to visit us this morning. Sophia approached cautiously, studying Julian with those amber eyes so like his own. Did you come to see Mama's home garden? It's even prettier than the museum one. Julian found himself smiling despite the tension. It's beautiful, just like I'd expect from your mother. But actually, I came to talk to both of you about something important. Camilla took a deep breath. Sophia, remember how we've talked about your father? How he lives far away and doesn't know about you yet? The child nodded solemnly. Well, Camilla continued, her voice gentle but firm. Mr. Reed is your father. I knew him before you were born, and now he knows about you, and he wanted to meet you properly. Sophia's eyes widened as she looked between them, her quick mind processing this revelation. Then, with the directness of childhood, she asked Julian, If you're my dad, why didn't you know about me? Julian felt his throat tighten with emotion. Because sometimes grown-ups make complicated decisions. Your mother wanted to protect both of us, and she didn't tell me about you until now. But I'm very glad to know about you now. Are you rich? Sophia asked suddenly. Tommy at school says his dad is rich because he has 2 cars. Despite everything, Julian laughed, a genuine laugh that released some of the tension. Yes, I suppose I am rich by most standards. I have a company that makes computers do special things. Like magic? Almost like magic, Julian agreed. But not as special as what your mother creates. Her art and gardens are real magic, bringing life and beauty where there was none before. Sophia considered this, then asked with disarming directness, Are you going to live with us now? Camilla intervened gently. No, mija. Your father has his own home. But if he wants to, and if you want to, he can be part of our lives in other ways. Julian met Camilla's eyes over their daughter's head, seeing both caution and hope there. I would like that very much, he said quietly. If you'll both give me the chance. As Sophia began excitedly showing Julian her favorite plants in the garden, pointing out the butterflies she'd helped attract and the vegetables she was growing, Camilla watched them with complex emotions playing across her face. The truth that had been buried for so long was now unearthed, exposed to light and air like the roots of her suspended gardens. Vulnerable, yet surprisingly resilient. The path forward remained uncertain, fraught with complications neither of them could fully anticipate. But as Julian knelt beside his daughter, listening intently as she explained the difference between marigolds and nasturtiums, Camilla allowed herself to hope that from these buried truths, something new and unexpectedly beautiful might yet grow. Bridges built from Ash's autumn painted Oakland in warm hues as Julian's driver navigated the familiar route to Camilla's building. 3 months had passed since that first morning in her garden, 3 months of careful steps toward building a relationship with his daughter and rebuilding trust with her mother. Today marked a significant milestone. Julian was taking Sophia for their first overnight visit to his San Francisco penthouse. He'd spent weeks transforming the sterile space into something more welcoming for a child, converting his home office into a bedroom filled with books, art supplies, and a telescope pointed toward the stars. As he climbed the steps to Camilla's apartment, Julian reflected on how his life had changed. Board meetings and development deadlines still consumed his days, but now his calendar also contained entries like Sophia's science fair and dinner at Camilla's. His executive team had adapted to their CEO suddenly prioritizing work-life balance, though speculation ran rampant about the mysterious child he occasionally mentioned. Camilla opened the door before he could knock, her expression a mixture of anxiety and resolve. "She's almost ready. Just finishing packing her favorite stuffed animals." Julian nodded, understanding her apprehension. This would be their first night apart since Sophia's birth. "We'll call before bedtime," he promised, "and I've memorized all her routines, allergies, and emergency contacts." A small smile softened Camilla's features. "I know you have. You've been very thorough." "Thorough is what I do," Julian replied with a self-deprecating shrug. "Though I've discovered my risk assessment skills are severely tested by playground equipment." Their shared laughter eased the tension that still occasionally surfaced between them. 3 months wasn't enough to fully bridge 5 years of absence, but they were trying, for Sophia's sake at first, and increasingly for their own. "Dad." Sophia came bounding into the room, a backpack nearly as large as she was strapped to her small frame. "I'm ready. I packed Mr. Whiskers and my space books and the special rocks we found at the beach." Julian knelt to embrace her, still marveling at how naturally she'd begun calling him Dad after just a few weeks. Children's capacity for adaptation and forgiveness humbled him daily. "Perfect," he said, adjusting her backpack straps. "And don't worry, I have art supplies and a garden waiting for you." Sophia's eyes widened. "A garden? In the sky?" "A small one," Julian admitted. "On my terrace. Nothing as magnificent as your mother's work, but there are tomatoes and herbs, and space for you to plant something if you'd like." The goodbye between mother and daughter was emotional but brief. Sophia too excited about the adventure ahead, to linger. As Julian led his daughter toward the waiting car, he glanced back to see Camilla watching from the doorway, her expression unreadable. Later that evening, after a dinner of homemade pizza, Julian's first attempt at cooking for his daughter, and a video call with Camilla, Julian sat beside Sophia's bed in her new room, reading from a book about the solar system. "Dad," she interrupted, her voice drowsy but thoughtful, "are you and Mama going to get married?" The question caught Julian off guard. "What makes you ask that?" Sophia yawned. "Tommy's parents didn't live together, and then they got married, and now they do. I thought maybe that's what grown-ups do when they have kids." Julian chose his words carefully. "Some grown-ups do that. But your mother and I have a different kind of relationship. We care about each other because we both love you so much, but we're not planning to get married." "But you like her," Sophia persisted, her perceptiveness unsettling. "You look at her the way Prince Charming looks at Cinderella in my book." Heat rose in Julian's face. "Your mother is an extraordinary person," he acknowledged. "I admire her very much. But relationships between grown-ups are complicated." "That's what Mama always says," Sophia murmured, her eyes drifting closed. "Grown-ups make things complicated." As his daughter fell asleep, Julian remained beside her, contemplating her innocent observation. Did he still have feelings for Camilla? The question had been hovering at the edges of his consciousness for weeks, ignored in favor of focusing on Sophia. The truth was discomfortingly simple. Yes. Beyond his gratitude for how she'd raised their daughter, beyond his admiration for her work, something of that connection from 5 years ago remained, perhaps had even deepened as he witnessed her strength, integrity, and fierce devotion to their child. The following morning, Julian prepared breakfast while Sophia explored the terrace garden, talking animatedly to the plants as he'd seen Camilla do. When his phone rang with Camilla's number, he answered immediately. "Everything okay?" she asked, her voice betraying a night of poor sleep. Perfect, Julian assured her. She's currently explaining photosynthesis to my basil plants. Camilla laughed, softly. That sounds about right. The apartment feels so quiet without her. You could join us for lunch, Julian suggested impulsively. I'm taking her to the Interactive Science Museum afterward. You'd enjoy it too. A pause followed, laden with unspoken complexities. Julian? Just lunch, he clarified. As Sophia's parents, nothing more. Another pause. All right, text me the address. Hours later, as they watched Sophia gleefully manipulating a display about wind patterns, Julian found himself studying Camilla's profile. The slight crease between her brows as she concentrated, the curl that persistently escaped her ponytail. Thank you, he said quietly. She turned, puzzled. For what? For her, Julian nodded toward their daughter. For raising her to be curious and kind and brave. For doing it alone when you didn't have to. For giving me the chance to know her now, when you could have kept her from me out of justified anger. Camilla's expression softened. She deserves to have you in her life. You're a good father, Julian. Better than I expected, honestly. Lower expectations make it easier to impress, he quipped, then grew serious. I want to talk about the future. About formalities like custody arrangements and support. Tension immediately returned to Camilla's posture. I don't want your money. It's not about what you want, Julian countered gently. It's about what Sophia deserves. Not luxury or excess, but security. A college fund. Health care without worries. Opportunities you shouldn't have to struggle to provide alone. I've managed so far, Camilla said, lifting her chin with the pride he'd always admired. You have. Extraordinarily well. But she's my responsibility too, and I have resources that should benefit her. Let me do this, Camilla. Not for you, for her. Before she could respond, Sophia called them over to see her creation in the wind tunnel. The conversation shifted, but Julian could see Camilla processing his words, weighing pride against practicality. That evening, after returning Sophia to her mother's apartment, Julian lingered in the doorway. Think about what I said. We can involve lawyers if that makes you more comfortable. Establish boundaries and terms. It's not about comfort, Camilla admitted. It's about independence, about showing Sophia that her mother doesn't need rescuing. Julian stepped closer, his voice low and earnest. Being willing to accept help isn't the same as needing rescue. It's about cooperation, partnership, building something stronger than either of us could create alone. He gestured to the thriving courtyard garden visible through the window. Like your installations, separate elements supporting each other, creating something greater than the sum of their parts. Camilla's eyes met his, a complex mixture of emotions swirling in their depths. You've changed. Fatherhood changes you, Julian acknowledged. So does regret and hope. Something shifted in the air between them, the careful distance they'd maintained giving way to something more honest, more vulnerable. Without conscious thought, Julian reached out, his fingers gently tucking that persistent curl behind her ear. Camilla didn't pull away. What are we doing, Julian? Building bridges, he murmured, from the ashes of what might have been to something new, something better, perhaps. Her smile was tentative but real. Engineers build bridges. I grow gardens. Then we're perfectly complementary, Julian said softly. Structure and life. Foundation and beauty. As he stepped back, respecting the boundaries still necessary between them, Julian felt something he hadn't experienced in years, perhaps ever. Not just hope or attraction or the fierce protectiveness of newfound fatherhood, but a sense of possibility opening before him like one of Camilla's installations. separate elements finding unexpected harmony, creating something both strong and beautiful from what once had been broken. The garden where stars bloomed 2 years later. Julian stood in the center of a greenhouse on the outskirts of San Francisco, surrounded by a riot of plant life and soft, ambient lighting. The space, once an abandoned industrial building, had been transformed under Camilla's vision into both a working studio and a permanent installation space for her increasingly renowned living sculptures. Tonight, it would serve another purpose: celebration. "Dad, is my bow tie straight?" 7-year-old Sophia appeared at his side, resplendent in a midnight blue dress with tiny stars embroidered across the fabric. Her hair, a wild tangle of curls so like her mother's, had been partially tamed into an elegant knot, though several spirals had already escaped. Julian knelt to adjust the child-sized bow tie she'd insisted on wearing with her dress. "Perfect. You look like the night sky come to life," Sophia beamed. "That's what Mama said too. She said I'm her constellation." The girl lowered her voice to a conspiratorial whisper. "Are you nervous?" Terrified, Julian admitted with a smile that belied his words. "But the good kind of terrified, like standing at the edge of something wonderful. Like when I learned to ride my bike without training wheels." "Exactly like that." Julian brushed a kiss against his daughter's forehead, marveling as he often did at her intuitive understanding of complex emotions. The past 2 years had unfolded in ways Julian could never have predicted. The careful co-parenting arrangement had gradually evolved as he and Camilla rebuilt trust and discovered that the connection between them had not merely survived their separation, but had somehow deepened, matured like one of her garden's roots, growing stronger beneath the surface. 6 months ago, Julian had finally voiced what had been evident to their daughter all along. He was in love with Camilla, not with the memory of their night in Aspen, but with the woman she'd become. Fierce, talented, uncompromising in her vision, yet gentle in her guidance. To his amazement, she had admitted to similar feelings, though both approached this second chance with the caution of people who understood what was at stake. "They're arriving!" Sophia announced excitedly, pulling Julian from his reverie as guests began filtering into the greenhouse. The gathering was intimate, just 30 people, including Julian's closest colleagues, Camilla's artist friends, and Sophia's favorite teacher. At the entrance, each guest received a small clay pot containing a seedling and a note explaining its significance in various cultural traditions. As Julian moved among the guests, accepting congratulations and deflecting questions about Nexus, technology's latest innovations, he caught glimpses of Camilla across the room. She wore a simple dress the color of sage leaves, her short hair adorned with a single white flower. She'd refused the traditional diamond he'd offered, instead designing their rings herself, bands of recycled platinum inlaid with fossilized wood, representing resilience and transformation. When the time came, they gathered in the center of the greenhouse where a living archway of flowering vines created a natural altar. Their officiant, a botanist friend of Camilla's, spoke about symbiotic relationships in nature, about how seemingly different organisms could sustain and strengthen each other. Sophia stood between them, holding both their hands, a physical manifestation of the bridge that had first connected them across the chasm of misunderstanding and missed opportunities. When it came time for vows, Julian spoke of gardens planted and tended with patience, of learning to value growth over acquisition, of finding his true fortune in the family before him. Camilla spoke of structures that support without confining, of the courage to allow oneself to be transformed by love, of second chances nurtured into bloom. As they exchanged rings, Julian noticed tears glistening in Camilla's eyes. Not the ceremony, or the guests, or even the words they'd spoken had moved her to emotion, but Sophia's expression of pure joy as she watched her parents formalize the connection that had existed from the moment of her conception. Later, as their guests dined at tables nestled among Camilla's living installations, Julian found a moment alone with his new wife on the greenhouse's small balcony. Below them, the city lights competed with the stars, both reflected in the bay's dark waters. "Mrs. Reed Vargas," he murmured, wrapping his arms around her waist from behind. "That will take some getting used to. Professional, I remain Magdalena." "Ortiz," she reminded him, leaning back against his chest. "Some separate roots keep the whole system healthier." Julian chuckled. "Always the botanist, even on our wedding day." "Always," she agreed, turning in his arms to face him. "It's how I see the world. Speaking of which, there's something I need to tell you." The seriousness in her tone made Julian's heart skip. "Is everything all right?" Camilla took his hand and placed it gently against her abdomen. "More than all right. We're expanding our garden." Understanding dawned slowly, then all at once. "You're pregnant? How long have you—" "8 weeks, she confirmed, her smile radiant in the moonlight. "I confirmed it yesterday. I wanted to be sure before I told you." "Sophia's going to be ecstatic," Julian whispered, overwhelmed by a surge of emotion stronger than anything he'd felt since holding his daughter for the first time. "A sibling is all she talks about lately." "I know. I think she somehow sensed it before I did. She's been talking to my stomach when she thinks I'm not paying attention." Julian laughed, then grew serious. "This time I'll be there for everything. Every appointment, every midnight craving, every moment." "I know you will," Camilla said softly. "We're different people now than we were 7 years ago. Stronger, wiser." Below them, Sophia had begun teaching the younger guests a dance she'd invented, her laughter rising like music through the greenhouse canopy. Around them, Camilla's living art breathed and grew, constantly evolving while remaining anchored in the foundations they'd built together. As Julian held his wife close under the vast canopy of stars, he reflected on the extraordinary journey that had brought them to this moment. From a storm-swept night in Aspen to a chance encounter in a museum to this greenhouse where art and science, structure and nature, past and future, had all intertwined to create something neither could have imagined alone. "What are you thinking?" Camilla asked, studying his face in the soft light. "About letters never sent," Julian replied. "About how sometimes the longest routes lead us exactly where we need to be." Camilla's smile held all the wisdom and warmth that had first drawn him to her. "In my work, I've learned that the most beautiful gardens are never the ones meticulously planned, but those that adapt and respond to unexpected conditions. Like life." "Like us," Julian agreed, sealing the thought with a kiss, as, below them, their daughter danced beneath living sculptures, where roots and branches entwined like stories, past and future growing together toward the light.